In this movie, I'll show you how to open an image inside a companion utility that ships along with Photoshop, known as Camera Raw. Now, I'll be devoting an entire chapter to Camera Raw inside this very course, so consider this movie a very basic introduction that allows us to have a little bit of fun. Now, the easiest way to open an image inside Camera Raw is from Bridge, so I'll go up to the File menu here inside Photoshop and choose Browse in Bridge, which will switch to the Bridge application. As you can see, I've navigated to the contents of the O1 Open folder. Now, the original purpose of Camera Raw was to open images that were captured to a pro-level camera's RAW image file format. But these days, you can open JPEG and TIFF images as well. You cannot open PNG or native PSD documents. And so what I'll do is I'll right-click on this TIFF image, and I'll choose Open in Camera Raw in order to open the Camera Raw utility like so. Next, what you most likely want to do is switch to the full screen mode by clicking on this toggle icon. You also have a keyboard shortcut of F for full screen, and that'll go ahead and hide all the applications in the background. All right, now let's say what I want to do is convert this image to a kind of old-time sepia tone. Then the first step is to go ahead and click on this fourth icon above the word Basic, and that's going to bring up the HSL Grayscale panel. Now, if you've never seen Camera Raw before, I don't expect you to follow every single one of these instructions. So again, this is just a very quick introduction. So I'll go ahead and turn on that Convert to Grayscale checkbox, which goes ahead and gets rid of the colors inside the image. The image ends up looking a little washed out, however, so I'll go ahead and click on this first icon, which represents the basic panel, and I'll take my exposure value down to negative 1.00, as we're seeing right here, which helps darken things up. And then I'll tab to the contrast value just by tapping the tab key, and I'll change it to 77, which just happens to be an easy value to enter. All right, now let's say I want to take my black and white image and make it a sepia tone. In that case, I would click on this fifth icon over, the one that reads split toning. And then notice that you have independent control over your highlights, the brightest values inside the image, as well as your shadows, which are the darkest values. I'm going to start by changing this first saturation value to 50%, and that way we end up infusing the image with a little bit of color, and then I'll change that hue value, which defines the actual color value, to 50 degrees. Now again, we're going to be going into all kinds of detail about what hue and saturation as well as highlights and shadows really mean in future chapters. So for now, don't get too hung up on the details. Now I'm going to infuse the shadows with some color by first changing the saturation value to 50%. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you change the hue value to, because we won't have any saturation. And then I'll change the hue value this time to 30 degrees, which is the shade of orange. So the highlights are now yellowish and the shadows are now orange. Now I'm going to make the image look a little weathered by clicking on this FX icon, which is the seventh icon over, and then I'll drop down to post-crop vignetting, and what we want to do is change the amount value to 33, which is going to brighten those corners to give them a faded appearance. And then I'll just go ahead and zoom in on the word Photoshop by clicking on it with my magnifying glass cursor, and then I'm going to take the grain value right here up to 50%, which is going to infuse the image with grain as we're seeing here. Now you have a couple of different options. One is to click the Open Image button, which is going to open the image inside Photoshop. Another option is to just click Done, which is going to save your changes and return you to Bridge. And notice if I click Done, which is located in the bottom right corner of the screen, now I have updated my image file here inside Bridge, and I can even see this tiny little settings icon, which indicates that I've applied some Camera Raw settings to this image. Now, if I double-click on the welcome.tiff image, instead of opening the file in Photoshop, as normally happens, we open the file inside Camera Raw, and that's because I've associated some Camera Raw settings with it. Now I can make any additional modifications I like because, as you can see, all these values are being applied dynamically on the fly. What I want to do, however, is crank up the clarity value in order to create a little bit of edge contrast where this image is concerned. And now let's say this time I want to open the image inside Photoshop. In that case, I just go ahead and click on the Open Image button, and that does open the image in Photoshop as we're seeing here, at which point I'll go ahead and press Control plus or Command plus on the Mac to zoom in. Now, what's amazing about this is all of these modifications are being applied dynamically, which means that I can change my mind, as I did just a moment ago, or I can totally clear the settings out by going to the File menu and choosing Browse and Bridge. And then I'll go ahead and right-click on that image thumbnail, and I'll choose Develop Settings, followed by Clear Settings. And that's going to get rid of those settings. It's also going to get rid of that little settings icon. And now notice, if I double-click on Welcome.tiff, that goes ahead and opens the image not inside Camera Raw, but inside Photoshop. And what's more amazing, I now have both versions of the image to work with in the event that I want to apply additional modifications here inside Photoshop. And that is a quick and dirty overview of how you can open an image inside Photoshop's development utility, which is known as Camera Raw.